And what's up, everybody? It's another episode of Nights at the Round Table. It's your boy, Man to the Well.
Okay.
That's a new one.
Angela Johnson, Reyes, hyphen that ish.
Bobese,
It's
Elise Murphy.
Elise Marie.
Oh, that's fancy.
Ooh,
You
throwing
know?
middle names.
We're drinking fancy wine tonight, so I feel like I had to do middle
I'm
names.
Brandon Smith.
Yeah.
B. Smitty.
Yeah.
Be Smitty, be real. And we're here at the table once again, enjoying another beautiful night right before we go see a movie together.
Yep.
So, kind of excited about
We're
that.
excited.
No, very excited
I'm very
about
excited about the wine. Can I just jump in?
Jump
with the
in.
wine?
Jump in.
Okay, so you guys, my mom for my birthday got me a wine club membership.
Great gift.
Oh my god, she loves me. And here's the fun thing about this wine membership: it's from Dry Farm Wines, which means they're like organic, no sugar. Let me just read. I took a picture of the a screenshot of their website just so I could not say it wrong. So, the only health-focused natural wine club in the world, all natural and additive-free, lab-tested for purity, sugar-free, and low alcohol. How awesome is that? So, tonight's wine is Zweigelt
Very well said.
2017. A lot of government warnings on the back. And that's it.
Very organic. You know,
Zweigelt.
interesting, my doctor, when I did my little testosterone thing, told me that I should drink red wine.
You're welcome.
Really? That's what
Yeah.
he told you? Like to help with
Yeah,
testosterone?
for health benefits. Yeah. She said something about it that it had, I forget what she called it, but she was like, legit, drink red wine. I was like,
She's like, I do it every night, and I feel great.
My Theo Mike, he every day he would, before he passed away, God rest his soul, he would have a glass of red wine every day at lunch, and he would always say that as he was drinking it, he would talk about how the doctors told him he should have wine every day.
yeah.
He may have overdone it,
I was
but
gonna say, I feel like people that drink wine every day talk about the health benefits a lot more than people that don't.
Yeah, she told me to take it, so I'm like, okay, I'll try it. I don't like it too much, but I am trying it, so let me give this one a swig.
Okay. Cheers, everybody. What do you
Yep.
think?
Tastes like
Tastes
feet.
like sour to me.
Tastes like feet. That's what it tastes like.
It's
it tastes
sugar-free
good.
though, man.
Hold on, Elise, you're better. What do you think?
It does have a smell to it.
Uh-huh.
I like it. I really like dry reds though. Like
I'm enjoying it.
The less sugar, the better.
Is that what dry means in the wines? It means it's less sugar?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
I also don't know. I was
specifically.
really hoping that you were going to confirm with a backup of it.
Okay, I know
think it
that
does.
dry is like a flavor profile, but when they say dry, I think they mean the thing that I just read, like the health benefits of it.
That
it's
makes
like,
sense.
But it's also sugar free, so that would make sense that it'll be dry.
Also, listen, you guys, leave us a comment. Tell us if we're wrong, because, like we said, we're all still kind of learning, and we just drink, $2 Chuck from the store. So
Dry it is.
this is fancy for us, you guys.
Yeah.
I
Well,
hope you like it.
rightly so. We're getting a little.
Saucy.
I was gonna say lubed up with the wine. That's what-
Yeah, there's the first
Slide
reference.
right on in. There we go.
Let's talk about sex, baby.
We're
Hey.
talking about sex today, and
Sexual intercourse.
sexual intercourse. We look, hey, from the beginning, we are not gonna use the safe terms. We're not gonna, call a penis a wee wee or a vagina a love oven, which I usually.
Wait, what?
I usually call Angela's a love
I think you were
oven.
the only ones that use those
do?
terms.
Yeah, I do say your love oven. Yeah.
Wait, who are you talking to when you say that?
To
term?
you, I've said it a couple times. I was like, love oven. I was like, how's
Not
your
while
love
we
oven?
were in the room, so.
No,
No,
so
you don't. You call it a shosha.
I
Okay.
do shosha when we're talking like free, but when I want to bake something,
When you're talking free?
like
What's a
yeah,
shosha?
when we're being silly, I'm like shosha. It's Spanish for
Still not vagina.
cooch
so-
malooch, but I like to
And
call
it's
it
not Spanish. It's your own Puerto Rican slang.
Yeah.
That's not how you say vagina in Spanish. You don't say shosha.
shosha. That's how we were raised. Don't make me feel bad about my upbringing. Hey, so anyways, we're gonna talk about sex, man. Okay, and here's why. Me and my queen here went to this marriage retreat, and
It was awesome.
It was amazing. The things we did were crazy, and it was all for married couples who wanted to deepen their relationship, to get back on track.
Crazy as in crazy deep.
Yeah, crazy good.
Profound.
Yeah.
And even more so, get their sex back. And what we realized when we were there is how many of the couples have lost not only like sexual identity, but their sexual prowess. Women, their femininity, like men, their understanding of it, and their women and how they see it. It was like a crash course of us realizing where couples are at, and us too, like where we're at. And so while we were sitting in the room, I was like, man, these stories are so deep, they're so real, they're so like crazy, that I'm like, I guarantee you there's so many more people that are dealing with this stuff than we know about. And so as soon as we left, I was like, babe, we got to do a podcast about it. We got to talk about sex and open up everything that we learned, and at the same time take away the stigma of like, oh my God, we're talking about sex. Close your ears, you know, because it is, at least depending on what background you have, whether it was a religious one or whether it was a strict family, sex was
Or the
typically
complete opposite, too.
Yeah, sex was typically a taboo. It was one thing that we didn't really talk about. I know with my parents, I had one sex talk with my dad, and he goes, "Watch where you stick your penis."
That was it.
Don't bring home nobody pregnant. And that was it. That was my sex talk. So I was like, okay, thanks, Dad.
My parents didn't have a sex talk. I remember the first time I was like introduced to sex outside of like, oh, it's a sex scene in a movie, and your parents go, close your eyes, or whatever.
Oh, that wasn't just mine?
Outside of that, I was in 3rd grade, and my neighbor friend around the block, I would go to her house, we'd play and stuff. And I remember I went to her house one time, and she calls me over like down the hall, right? And she was like, come here real quick. I'm like, okay. And so we go to, I think it was like her brother's room or her mom and dad's room, somebody's room. And she goes, do you smell that? And I was like, no. And she goes, that's sex. That's what sex smells like.
Oh, wow.
What?
I was in 3rd grade.
Oh my goodness.
Jeez. And she was in 3rd grade too. We were in the same class. But that was like a very like graphic, but also like sex is not just like what you see in the TVs. Like, what do you mean that's what it smells? There's a smell to it? What is that? Like, it was awkward, and I didn't know what does that even mean? And there are no follow-up questions to that. It was just like pretending like, oh, okay. And then for the rest of my life, I'm like, what? Like, that was my introduction to like, there's sex is a thing that you do, and there's more to it than the movies.
Oh, wow.
Wow, 3rd grade.
Dang. I pretended I knew what sex was for a long time. When, like, because what you just said, there are no follow-up questions. So you kind of just have to, like, fill in the blanks as you go, or I did as a kid. So in, like, elementary or primary school, like, people would start talking about, like, sexual stuff. I was in a very, like, Christian school as well, so it was, like, later elementary/high school. I can't really remember, to be honest, my first conversation. I was very sheltered for a very long time. I remember my parents trying to give me like a sex talk, and I wouldn't let them. Like, they were trying. My parents
How
were the
old
best.
were you?
Oh, I had to be like 13, 12 or 13.
That's the right age.
And they were right. My parents are awesome. We love them. But they tried, and I wouldn't let them. I was like, oh my God, no, I'm not talking. I will learn it at school, guys. And Dad's like, now listen, Elise, we would like to have the conversation about sex. Your mother and I. And I was like, nope, not doing it. This is not happening. But it was like, I would fill in the blanks. I remember I was like in the 6th grade, the first time I kissed a boy. And it was at my friend Chelsea Burgess's house.
Shout out to
His
Chelsea.
His name was Blake Pierce.
Burgess.
We were sitting on a trampoline at her birthday party, and like we kissed. And I mean, like, not a real kiss. Like, I was up all night, like staring at the wall.
You thought you had sex?
I thought I'd had. I was like, am I pregnant? I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's happening. And then later, had my first like real kiss with a boy, Sam Crawford. So that was great. It was actually terrible. It was like a washing machine. It was horrible. But I thought I had sex again. Like, I really couldn't figure out that this, and I knew it wasn't sex, but the feeling was like, I was up all night wired, like just like, oh my God, what if people find out? Like, oh my gosh, this is great. And like anything to do with romantic or as you go on sexual, for me, it's always had a connotation with like, I'm just then wired, like just like, oh my goodness. There's this energy around it that even talking about sex out in the open, it changes the energy in a room. Don't you think? Like it's...
Yeah, it does something. My first introduction to having a sex talk was actually in 5th grade with my dad. And the reason that I felt like that talk got like pushed forward was because the public school that I went to, we had a sex ed class. And so we had to take home these VHSs and watch them with our parents.
No way.
So I'm sitting there on my parents' bed watching the sex ed video and feeling like, oh man, this is so awkward. They're talking about penises and
Little puberty
they're talking about erections, and I'm like, erections? Because every once in a while you'd wake up with some morning wood and you'd be like, I don't know what this says. I don't know what to do with this. So I'm just gonna like go about the rest of my day. And then so we ended up having a talk, and it was sort of like, the Christian sex talk of like, hey, you don't have sex until you're married. It's a very special thing. Not necessarily like the ins and the outs, because again, probably at that age, you don't really need to know that. But pretty close to that year. So this would have been 5th grade, like about to graduate and move on to 6th grade. Like later that year was the first time that I had seen anybody have sex. And I was over one of my friend's house, and he was like, oh, yo, my brother, he wants to like show us something. And so we go up to their like computer room and something. And he's like, oh, you guys are going to like this. So this is like summer going into 6th grade. Me and my friend Chris. I forgot his older brother's name. And so he turns on this video, and it is a porn video, and people are having sex in the porn. And I'm standing there, and it was one of the weirdest feelings that I've ever had in my life.
Wow.
Because
you're with people, or because
you're
you're like,
both.
what is this?
Because I'm like, 1, what is this? 2, why can't I look away from this? 3, why am I like energized by this? And 4, why do I feel shameful about this? Like I feel like I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so it was such this weird like, oh no, like sex might, like it has this connotation being bad, especially in the culture that I grew up in. So now watching this and being exposed to this, you're like, oh, this is really bad. Like I got to stay away from this. But I was always curious about it. So it's kind of one of those crazy things.
And this is the thing that we learned. So while we were there, people were giving their stories and giving their like behind the scenes of why they're where they're at. And, there was one story of a girl who said that, she's never moved her body before. And she literally was not joking. It wasn't like a hyperbole. It was literally,
like dancing?
I've never moved my body.
Sexually. Oh.
Like it just wasn't. Wow. It was because she grew up in a religious background as well. And it was taught to her one way, and it was that it was bad, and me in my background I started going to church senior year of high school. That was way after I had sex. Too late. I had sex.
It was too late.
I had sex like at 13, so I was already like figuring it out way back then. And so when I was introduced to this,
I kissed a boy for the first time at 13.
Yeah,
We're
but
so
I've always
similar.
been ahead of
It's
time.
amazing.
I've always been ahead.
I've always been behind. It's
on
fine.
a lot of things. Don't make jokes, please. And so like one thing I realized quickly when I got into when I started going to church, I wasn't even saved though. I started going in 9th grade and I was still smashing. So it didn't really. I was just a bad guy, in that sense of a word. And then finally I get serious my senior year of high school. And something switched where it was like I started associating sex with just absolute, like what you guys are saying, like shame. Like there was something wrong with me because no one was telling me, this is good, bro. One day this is going to be amazing. You're going to want this one day. It was just, do not have sex. Like that's bad. If you have sex, it's going to be bad. And so I spent most of my, post-salvation period trying to pray away, build walls away, like all these things that I did all the way up until college. So it was like a good 3 or 4 years. And get this, I would, if I was dating someone and we slipped in any way, not having sex, but just actually in like go
Like
a little bit
made
too
out
far,
heavy?
I would break up with them. Because I thought the relationship is no longer holy. I have to go.
Dang.
Damn you, Eve.
I was just breaking up with people because I was like, man, I didn't make it. And I literally thought in order to get married or in order to like please God or whatever, that I had to make it completely the whole relationship up until I got married and not make a mistake in that realm, or else I would leave. And it wasn't until college when my president, Rutland, shout out to Rutland, Mark Rutland, he was like, he basically called me an idiot because he was like, I don't understand why some of you guys try to pray away your libido. Like,
Sheesh.
you're literally trying to pray away biology. You're asking God to go back to the beginning of time and remake man.
Wow.
How is that ever going to be a valid prayer? Like, it's not the libido you want to get rid of. You just want to learn self-control. Meaning, if you know your body and you know that if it starts, you're going to want to finish. And, you know, and that's how men's bodies are created. That's what and this is from the pulpit, this is why I love him. He's like, man, when you don't finish, what happens to you? And everybody's secretly like, blue balls, blue balls, blue balls, they get blue balls. And he's like, that's your biology saying you shouldn't have stopped. That's your body telling you, we are upset that you stopped.
We are upset.
Which means,
we're gonna turn
hey
blue.
man, just don't start. Try to figure out a way. If you can figure out a way to not start, then you'll win most of your battles. If you can do that. But please stop praying away a prayer that's never going to get answered. You can't change your libido and you don't want to. Yeah. Sex is a dope thing and you're going to be able to enjoy it one day. But don't pray it away, because then what happens when you do enter into sex, i.e. transition into what we experienced at that marriage retreat. There was a lot of people that came with certain baggage and ideologies that literally hindered their sexuality, women, their femininity. It's hard for one day to just wake up and now that you're married and all of a sudden everything's free game. And I have so many friends that were like, I felt like a whore. I felt like trashy.
Yeah.
My husband wants me to give him head. And all of a sudden I was taught that that's just for hoes and whatever. And now all of a sudden I'm supposed to be okay with it. And then dudes are frustrated. So you have this whole world of people that never spoke about it, wasn't allowed to speak about it. God forbid you find out that they're talking about sex pre-marriage, you know, and it becomes something dirty. So at this conference, we saw that play out in people and how it's affected like these marriages, like to a 10th degree of like, wow, like this was intense. And it just made me want to hug everyone. Like, guys, we're going to be okay. Like, we just need to start talking about sex and let's just like let it out in the open. And me and the dudes, we went and for lunch that day and we just opened up about everything, sex, everything. And it was so freeing because they were like, holy crap, I'm not the only one that thinks this way.
Yeah.
It was freedom. It was crazy.
There's something about like safe places to talk about things that is huge. And I think it comes down to that. Like for me anyway, like if you don't have a safe place to talk about stuff, especially for newlyweds, especially if you don't have sex before you're married, which is like a huge thing, especially the way I grew up, the way a lot of us grew up in like a religious environment through the church. It was a fundamental belief of mine that I will not have sex before I'm married. So for me, I was brought up super sheltered. So what do you do when you move to LA, are no longer sheltered, and you're like, oh crap, that didn't work. And meanwhile, I'm in ministry. Like you add the ministry pressure of like, I am a pastor. I also have a book coming out called Confessions of a Church Kid at the time when I was like, if only you knew. But what do you do? For me, rules weren't going to cut it. What the Bible said wasn't going to cut it when you've already done the thing that you got told and got brought up. Don't do this. It was almost, no one said it, but would you agree? Like it almost felt like the unforgivable sin for like a little while.
It felt like you are letting down your future spouse. Yeah. That if you have sex, you are simply saying to your future you and your future spouse that you don't love them enough to wait for them.
Why do I feel like that was a sermon that you actually heard?
Oh, it was. And like, it was a crazy thing because I remember this one youth pastor giving this example and he just said, imagine you on your wedding day. And imagine when it's that moment to say I do to your wife, that you look around you and all the partners that you've been with in your life, they also have to agree too, because in that moment when you had sex with them, you gave a piece of yourself away that you'll never get back. So you were offering your spouse a fractured you. And I just remember hearing that, and I'm like, oh my God, that's really scary.
Yeah.
And I was like, being a youth and just trying to just learn and accept wisdom from older people, I just thought, well, I want to be in the position where I could give my entire self to my future spouse. But looking back now, that is so unhealthy. And that puts the people who maybe have made mistakes when it comes to sex, or maybe have actually willingly loved somebody and had sex with them. That doesn't make you less of a person. That's such a toxic belief.
Yeah.
Yo, there was a time, and this is getting real TMI, but I don't even care. There was a time.
Does this involve me?
No, baby.
Okay.
There was a time.
She's like, I have a say in that TMI
Yeah.
if it involves me.
Pre my queen. I was riddled with so much shame and guilt when it came to sexual acts. I remember I was still in Group 1 crew, and me and my girl had just gotten down. And I said we were going to say everything, but I won't be too crass. So let's just say my soldiers marched, and it landed, marched on her leg, right? So
I feel like it would have been better for you just to say it, to be
Okay.
honest.
Yeah. Now the visual is that much stronger.
Yeah, I'm seeing soldiers
Hate you.
Soldiers.
on her leg,
Marching
and she's like,
legs.
"What's happening to me?"
My
It's like
sol-
Toy Story all over again, but R-rated.
my men ran down her leg, right? And so here's the hilarity of it. Because I can't, I am all about accountability, and I can't take stuff. I'll want to
me
jump
too.
out of a window. I call my manager, and I'm like, man, bro, I think I got a girl pregnant. And he freaks out. He's like, what did you do, Manny? I was like, well, I was, whatever. And I was explaining him the situation, and he goes, Manny, it doesn't sound like you had sex. And I was like, well, technically I didn't, bro. And he's like,
But my soldiers.
I was like, he starts laughing so hard at me. He's like, I'm so sorry. But he's dying, and I'm crying. I'm in the airport confessing, about to
Not
get off.
laughing, crying, sad crying.
He's laughing, crying. I'm sad crying.
No.
I'm like, you don't understand. How can I get on stage? And da-da-da-da. And he's like, Manuel, I don't mean to be insensitive, but you can't get people pregnant unless you have sex with them. And I was just like, yeah, but I should know better. And I'm going to be the second man in history that gets someone pregnant, and I didn't have sex with them. Watch, it's going to happen. And it was all because I swear, I should have known better.
No, I can totally
My
relate to that.
guilt was overwhelming to the point where
Yep.
it was just like, you are the worst in the world. I had fears of visions of that night being on screen when I'm performing, behind me, and people seeing what I did. And literally I'd be on stage, shoulder slump, just not in character, just completely, just almost to the point of
Buddy.
suicidal, all because my body
Wow.
was acting the way it was
should.
designed to act. I just had a little bit of a problem with not being such a hopeless romantic, because that was my thing. I wasn't the guy that was like, I'm gonna go hit it and quit it. I was like, could she be the one? Should I share
He
myself?
starts singing Enrique Iglesias.
Should we just give all of each other? I'd be like, oh my gosh, she could be the one. So I'd be in all the way and just make dumb mistakes. But that's how much riddled with guilt I was, because I didn't have anybody telling me, hey man, it's okay.
And that's
You're normal.
That's the thing about the safety of people, to hear you're normal. And that's the thing with growing up in church, you don't have sex till you're married. Then what happens on the wedding night when you haven't had sex because it's been, don't do it till you're married. If you wait, it'll be great type vibe. And then it's not great.
Then it's awkward as hell.
Then it's awkward. What do you do if you don't have it? Because then it's meant to be great. Everyone told you to be great, so there must be something wrong
Yeah.
with you.
Well, speaking of which, look, I came up with 4 questions that I thought would be fantabulous for us to go around and not only answer, but ask our friends, people close to, because these these are not conversations you have normally with anyone. And so the 4 questions were this. 1, did you have sex before you were married with whoever it is that you married? Not just period, but the person that you married, did you have sex with them before you got married? Second, how was your wedding night? Third, were there any hurdles that you had to overcome or are still overcoming because of either a religious, a family, some type of a background that taught you something unhealthy about sex? And then fourth, if you had to do it again, married people, meaning wives, if God forbid your husband dies, husbands, if your wife died, and you had to do it again, knowing your sex life now, would you still wait for marriage to have sex? And I know, church people, I'm not trying to say, I'm not trying to condone something, but this is like a really provocative question because if you don't know people's sex life, you probably would think that the answer would obviously be, oh, no, I would wait. But when I asked some friends, that's not the answer I got. And it wasn't that they loved Jesus any less, but they understood 10 years into the marriage how much weight sex had on their marriage. And so I'm gonna open up to the floor. Does anybody?
We should go first because our story is we're married. So
we are married.
So we did not have sex before we were married.
We did not.
Our wedding night was absolutely horrible.
You had the runs.
It was, well, not only that, like earlier in the day, I got sick. I had diarrhea. It was whatever. It was a terrible day. I do a joke about it. It's in my second hour special. It's called The Homecoming Show. Check it out. You can stream it on my website. www.angela.com. Nice.
Angela with a J.
It was terrible because, so I wasn't feeling well from earlier, but in my mind, it's like, it's wedding night. You have to do it. So we're going to do it whether I was feeling well today or not. And so, of course, I'm not feeling sexy, any of that, but it's all the like shame and all that kind of stuff. It was so painful. There was no like foreplay or anything like that to like, I was not like being completely open and honest. It was more like we were doing it because this is what you're supposed to do on your wedding night, not because I was so sexually charged and energized by you and you were feeling the same. And so we came together and it was not that. It was like, this is what we do. So my vagina was like so tight, hard, like it was not, there was like a gate that was like no entry. And then I was crying. It was like my husband, I remember you saying to me things like to stop crying, not because like stop crying, but like,
it wasn't rapey. Don't
like,
worry.
It feels like I'm raping you. Like it feels like that. Like we can't do this if you are like crying hysterically. So I had to calm myself down just so we could get it done with and get it over with. And that was my first time.
How did you feel, Manny?
Well, I'm not good at that. Like, even now, if she's ever not cool or not in the mood, I'm just that dude that's like, okay, I'm good. Like, I can't do it.
Duh.
No, it's not duh. I know a lot of cats that be like, if I need it, I need it. Like, because what's the other option? You want me to go find it somewhere else, or do you want me to go?
I think there's an option C.
I mean,
somewhere in there.
But somewhere in there, like, I mean, and then again, you got this thing, depending on how you were raised, it's taught, hey, if your man asks for it, you got to give it to him because it's like, you don't want him to find it anywhere else. That's the whole thing. So with me, I was just like, I'm not cool. Like, if she's not happy, I'm not happy. And that's just really how our sex life works. It's like, man, I just can't get down with it. Can't feel good about it. I don't need to scratch an itch like that hard. Like, to me, it's just like, I have to figure out how I can please her and make sure that she's happy, and then I'll really be happy. And it's always like that. Like, if she's like legit happy and taken care of, then I feel like everything is golden after that.
Is that like the unspoken rule, or maybe the spoken rule with like husbands with like men, is like predominantly making sure she's happy and then you're happy? Like, if she
different for everyone. It's different,
for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, one of my mentors in my life, he was like, hey man, when it comes to sex, you got to make sure, man, she's satisfied, she's happy. So that just became like number one priority for Maddie. It was just like, yo, I don't want to just be the dude that like it's only me getting off and you're just kind of just there, like just taking it. And at the end of the day, like, you didn't get pleasured. Like, that feels very selfish for me.
There's a lot of friends that I talk to that are married that are girls, and they're like, I don't even know what an orgasm feels like. I just don't know. Because at the end of the day, it's like not really about me in there.
Wow.
I'm like,
It's
damn.
crazy.
What were the rest of our questions that we had to answer?
We answered the first one,
The
second one,
hurdles.
and then
How was your
were there
wedding?
any hurdles that you deal with in in your sex life
Okay.
that were from either religious, family, whatever, are you still dealing with hurdles?
Miscommunications.
So many things. Bringing it back to the conference that we went to, the retreat, the Master Heart Marriage Intensive. There is so much shame and guilt on me from my upbringing, not only just in the church, but even like as a child. Like, I remember when my parents were still married, my dad, we had like the Playboy channel and all that kind of stuff. And I remember a few times, like my dad would be watching like the Playboy channel and my mom being like, don't watch that in front of the kids. And then he'd be like, it's just boobs or whatever. And then I remember going into the back shed and finding all my dad's dirty magazines. So I was exposed to pornography very young. But again, that's coming back to like, oh, that's what I see on TV and magazines. Like, I don't know that, like my third grade story, like there's a smell. What does that even mean? Like it's 3-dimensional. Hold on. And so I was exposed to pornography very young. And in the same way, kind of like the story you said, like you're with all your friends and whatnot. I remember like it would be a bunch of us friends and watching the pornography on TV. And then my mom canceled the channels and it would come in fuzzy. And we would still watch it fuzzy because we wanted to. And it was like we would turn on the dirty channel and you could still see some of it and we would watch it. And we were young. And so, but it's shame. We would do that in hide. My mom's not home. Like that's shame. That's bad that you want to watch sex. It's bad that you have to go to the back shed behind the boxes to look at the dirty magazine. So it's like shame, right? So there's shame from just childhood upbringing. And then also just from the church and religion and what I have experienced. Just it's bad until you're married. Okay. So then it's like anytime you start feeling these feelings as a teenager or even in your early adult years, like it's bad, like shut it down. And so I would train myself to shut it down. And then all of a sudden, now I'm supposed to be able to turn it on. And I don't know how to turn it on. I don't know how to get past my head. And I remember when we first got married, I would have friends tell me like, well, take a shot before you have sex. Like just take a shot of tequila or whatever it is. And none of that would ever work. But back to this retreat, we learned exercises that would help us embrace our femininity, which means all of our emotions, our sexuality, our sexual energy, that like seductress woman in us. Like you would never hear that in my upbringing, like, oh, there's a seductress woman in you and that's okay to have her. Like it would be like, no, freaking Jezebel, whatever.
Yes.
But we learned in this conference, like there's this seductress woman in you. And there's a way that you can like encourage her to come out and offer that part of yourself to your husband as this like offering of love to him. So it was like an exercise of taking shame and guilt off and getting into this woman, getting into your body, feeling into your femininity, grounding in and allowing her to come out and then presenting it to your husband. And we would do these exercises by ourselves, just the women, and then the men would come back into the room, and then I was able to like practice giving that, like obviously we're not having sex in front of people, but it was just like
No, we did a lap dance though.
we did this
was
lap
dope.
dance exercise
In front of everyone. Everybody was there.
But
Like
everyone was doing it at the same time.
all the same
so
time.
and
all
you're
the
supposed to
couples.
No one
be
else was
locked
watching, in a
eye-
sense.
No. You're supposed to be locked eyes with your partner the whole time. So you're not supposed to be seeing what everybody else is doing.
It's not a show.
And,
No.
Exactly.
But Angela did it so good that I low key I was like, niggas are watching.
You so dumb,
I was
man.
like, babe, you're probably dancing.
They're like,
better
man,
than
she really
everyone."
good. I wish my wife would.
And he's like, oh, yo, check this out.
It's kind of the truth, you know.
But it was amazing to learn that these things are okay, that I have this feminine power within me, to learn how to bring her out, to learn how to offer her. And I feel like even that has been life-changing
Yeah.
in our
Because
sex
tell
life.
them how you used to. What was your used to go to?
Laughing?
Yeah.
Okay. So, we talked about, and we brought it up too at the conference, and
it was common.
Quite a few people raised their hands, and it was basically like, how many of us use humor, playfulness, and silliness as a safety when it comes to sex? So like, that's kind of where we would be, instead of like it being passion and desire, we would be like silly, because if I'm being silly, I'm not vulnerable. But if I'm being vulnerable and sexy and like showing all those sides of me, then it's unsafe. And so they taught the men how to be a safe place for us, so that we feel comfortable opening up in a passionate, desirable way, and to leave all the silliness behind. No laughing, don't even, like, I would tell Manny, like in our exercise, like, don't even smile at me, because your smile, I'm registering as like, he thinks it's funny, it's silly,
Right.
it's not sexy, forget it, never mind, you know? And so I would be like, okay, don't even smile, just like enjoy it, find a different way to enjoy it. And
I did enjoy it. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Because when you were done, I was like, you should do this more often. You're good at it.
yeah.
I was legit like, they should have like a 30-minute like go
Now
be by
everybody
yourself.
go to your cubby holes.
Go to your cubby hole.
Go to your cabins.
Because I was like, man, you're doing it so good. And again, it's like, for me, it's like when she can fully embrace herself and have this. That's one of the biggest things in our marriage that I keep telling her. I'm like, babe, I just want you to feel sexy. Because when you feel sexy, like, there's no reason, like, I promise you, I'll have no problem like getting into it or
And
being
it was
whatever.
so hard to do as someone coming from the background that I just explained, but also embracing my tomboy-esque essence, which is also, to me, the same way silliness is. It's a safety net. When I'm tomboy and I feel tough, I got my jeans and my tennies or whatever, like I feel comfortable, I feel safe here. So to me, confidence is sexy, and I'm confident when I'm in my tennies, in my jeans, and a hoodie. I feel confident, so that must mean sexy. Well, that's not how it's interpreted on the other end. And so now I'm learning how to embrace my femininity. And I could still be my tomboy self, but I'm learning how to embrace my sexuality and be okay with that, with playing with my hair, with all the things that we learned.
And the final question is, if you had to do it again, would you wait till marriage?
No.
Yeah, I don't know if I would either.
I love Jesus. I will still worship Jesus, but no. Don't
yeah,
die, first of all.
I'll try
But
not
if
to.
you do, no.
I don't think I'm gonna go out there
open
and just be
season.
like ho ho, because I don't think I can handle it.
I might be ho ho.
I'm that dude that can't handle it. I'll fall in love with everybody and get my heart broken nonstop. I'll front and act like, yeah, I can handle this, but shut up. The first time I do anything stupid, I'm gonna be like, oh my God, call me, please. Why is she not calling me?
I will take everything I learned at that conference
and express yourself. Nah, yeah, I don't know if I could. Even though I love Jesus, like I think I would want to know what I'm getting into. And that sounds weird to say that. I mean, I hope I don't get crucified, but when you really think about it, it's like, it's crazy. I let me say this. I would hope that I can be like, you know what? I don't need to know. Like I would hope that I'd be like, I'm gonna stay the course, because deep down I know that's what I want. But then again, knowing the weight of it, man, I feel like my body would be like, nah, you need to find out. You know?
I'm gonna test the goods before I invest.
You
You know
need
what I
to
mean?
find out, you know? And I'm not saying that has to be like when I just meet the person, but, you know, maybe in the honeymoon stage, like right before we get married, maybe like a month before. I don't know. I'm just saying I think that's maybe where my head will be at. Anyways, what about you guys? Did you answer it? Could you answer it? Will you answer it?
Yeah, I'll answer it. Let me see. So Maddie and I, we were actually both virgins.
Nice.
Before we got married. So our first time was together. And, you know, it's funny because I could say it was good, but that's also because there's no other thing to compare that with.
Yeah.
So like it was a very cool moment because one, you're like, oh my God, this is like really real. Like we're getting to it.
Yeah.
But at the same time too, there wasn't anything of like, is she going to match up with, man, that one experience I had my first time. And she's feeling the same way too. And like, it's funny because I asked a couple friends and everyone was like, dude, it was terrible. It was horrible. It was like awkward, you know? But like for us, it was awesome.
Good for
And
you.
like, yeah,
great.
I mean, there was like, the foreplay was good. And then we got into it and it was just like, we both felt good after.
That's amazing.
And like, I think when we were having sex, obviously because it's your first time and like the tendency is to come fast.
yeah.
And I was just like, God, please don't let me come fast. I was like, God, this feels so good. I don't want it to stop.
I pray that every time.
So I was just like,
Even now.
I was like, all right, so we're getting to it.
Halfway through your
And,
sentence.
Yeah, I'm like, all right, let me slow down. Let me slow down real quick. Try and change positions, try and like slow up the pace. So I'm like not gonna come, and I'm like trying to think about don't come. And as soon as I get back in, boom, done. And so after that, I was like, she didn't come from the
Your
intercourse.
soldiers marched.
Again, this is getting like really real. I'm getting like hot.
Maddie moment.
And yeah, and so I was like, all right, well, I want to make sure you're taken care of too. And so took care of her.
Gotta take
And
care.
then yeah, we didn't get into like a second round or anything, but we just stayed up and we were just like hanging out. And I think the thing that was so amazing about it was just the connection that I felt. Like obviously like that felt really good.
That's special.
But like that connection that I felt with her, like on an emotional level, is something I've never felt before in my life. And I was just like, damn. Like when they used to tell me like, yo, sex is a powerful thing, I really believed it the first time I had sex. But being able to have that with my wife was so
Yeah.
dope.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
How old were you guys when you got married?
Yeah.
Maddie was 21, I was 25.
Okay. So I would say, again, everybody's life is different. So this is a blanket statement that I'm making. But Manny was 30 and I was 29. And I feel like I definitely had a few more years of trauma to rack up behind me. You know what I mean? To where, like, how you were saying, like, just our connection was so whatever. Like, I don't remember early on feeling like, oh, our connection. I remember just being in my head the whole time of like what it's supposed to feel like, what it's supposed to look like, how long it's supposed to last, what you're supposed to do. I remember being more, anytime we would have sex, like in the beginning, was more about getting it right than it was about, oh, we're having this amazing connection. I feel like that took work for me to be able to get to a point where I was actually concerned about the connection than getting it right.
And I felt that. Like something that you said, like it was a blessing that you didn't have sex. Y'all were both married. I mean, virgins when you got married. And I had sex before. So that, and I'm sure a lot of dudes deal with this, or women, that it is a compare game, and it's not even on purpose.
Yeah.
It's just that you know what is out there, and now you have it to compare, and it sucks, because this is why I wish I was a virgin, because you know what good head feels like, you know what these different positions feel like, you know how freaky someone can be and someone cannot be, and then you get married, and it's not like you're like, oh man, I got a lemon. You don't think that,
Right?
Because if you wanted that chick, you would go be with that chick. But it's really like, crap, now I know I have something to compare, and you find yourself subconsciously comparing, and sometimes that can make a dude feel like he's missing out, like he's missing out on all this whatever. Now, of course, like with me, like I just speak truth, and I'm like, if I wanted to be with those people, I would be with those people. I'm with exactly who I want to be with.
Right.
But it's interesting. And then what about your hurdles? Did
Yeah,
you
the
have
hurdles, that's a huge thing. I'd say one of the biggest hurdles we had to get to was like communicating. So like it felt weird because my idea of what sex should be like was just like all passion and desire, and no room for like, yo, stuff's gonna happen, you're gonna laugh, sometimes you're gonna stop mid and just be cracking up about something, the bed, whatever, you hear some noise outside, like that kind of stuff felt like, oh, this isn't special sex, because this is like, it's got to be serious, like we got to get to it. And so, and then also too, just learning how to communicate. Like we're both still learning each other's bodies. We're almost 2.5 years married now. And so I think communicating, hey, do you like this? Does this feel good for you? Does this hurt? This feels really good for me. I like when you do this for me, and that kind of stuff. And it's weird because even though we have good sex, it's like it still sometimes feels weird to talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And then the other big hurdle for me too was realizing how much in regards to a woman, their emotions being involved is so important.
Right.
So there was a season where Maddie was like super stressed at work. And so it was like we weren't having as much sex as I was used to us having. And so all of a sudden I'm back in my mind of like, oh, does she just not find me sexy anymore? I'm like working out. I'm like, girl, you see this? I'm like walking around the house naked, like trying to turn her on. And I'm like, you see me? Like I'm standing in the doorway, you know? And it just wasn't in the mood. And I didn't get it. And so I remember us sitting down and I was just like, look, I just don't feel desired right now. Like, I don't feel like you want me. Like, what's going on? Like, is there something in my life I need to change? Because I don't like this. Like, I really enjoy having sex and I don't like when we don't have sex, you know? She's like, well, I'm just like really stressed. And I'm like, well, am I sexy to you? Yeah. Okay. Then like, what's the problem? You know, but not even realizing like, all of this is connected to the emotions, the stress, the pressures, all that kind of stuff. And so then I took it on. Not only do I have to like, my job is to just like turn her on or whatever, but also maybe I could take away some of that stress. Maybe I could take away some of that pressure in your life. So you feel like you're in a position that you can open up more.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing too, that like helped me early on get over of like the shame of having sex. Was during our premarital, one of our guys, he told us, he's like, hey, yo, B, he pulled me aside and he was like, man, I want you to understand something. He's like, everything in the marriage bed is holy, man. And I mean that. And I wasn't going to ask him what that meant. Cause I'm like imagining like all these toys, like all these things. And so I was just like, all right, cool. So I was like, I don't know why, but it gave me like grace to just like
permission.
Permission to like just go and explore and have fun with my wife and not feel bad about it because like honestly that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, Song of Solomon, that bitch.
I was gonna say, to touch on what you were saying about communication and like our body, like our emotions being attached to everything. I feel like does this feel good to you? I remember Manny would always say like, you know, I want to know what feels good to you. You have to learn your body and know your body. And the thing was, my body was frozen. So there was no learn my body, because anytime we would go to have sex, my body was the same thing, rigid. Wow. It was like, I don't know what feels good because that's not it. I don't know. So it was connected to my emotions, connected to shame, connected to guilt, all of that stuff. Like I would immediately get in my head and all the things. Like how you were saying earlier about like you can compare to the people before you, and then it's not like, oh, I got a lemon, but it's you have like, you know what good head feels like, and then you marry someone who has like shame, guilt, and trauma connected to this act, that it's stuff that has to be worked through, and then not knowing how to work through it. It's been so liberating learning all this stuff from this conference, but there was one point that I wanted to make about so one important thing they said at the conference was, for the guys who really want sex, or a girl who really wants sex,
could be both,
if you want to have sex with your partner, is it because you want to get off or you desire her? And women, we feel that, and we know the difference. So we know when our husband comes up to us and wants to get off, and we know when he's desiring us. And if you feel desired, that's a completely different thing emotionally. Yeah. And I didn't know that. I couldn't even articulate that feeling. So when before, maybe it would feel like a duty, or it would feel like, oh, we haven't had sex in a while, so we should probably do it. It was like out of obligation. But then when you add this element of being able to articulate, like it comes out of desire and passion. And when you feel you're being desired, it turns something on in you. Whereas like before we got married, our makeout sessions was real nice. Yeah. It would be real hot and passionate because it was bad. because it was not allowed. Because it, we were taught like this is bad, so it's shame and it's guilt and whatever. So it was like passionate because we're like, ooh, we're doing something naughty.
Yeah.
And then the second you get married, it's not naughty anymore. So it's like, okay, what do? I don't know. So there's so many layers to work through. That communication is so key, but then also give yourself grace if you don't know how to communicate that. I don't know what to do with my body and I don't know how to feel.
Yeah.
That's really good.
What about you, Bobise?
Yeah, mine's currently in between marriages, like not married right now. But I wasn't a virgin when me and my ex-husband got married. Neither was he.
But you weren't a virgin together, meaning like...
No, but we didn't have sex before we got married.
Yeah.
We really didn't. What's crazy, people didn't believe us. When we would say like we didn't have sex, you know what I mean?
Absolutely. People all the time be like, I see the way you guys are together. You're way too comfortable.
But
you
even
guys
y'all,
definitely
like
had
y'all
sex.
didn't know us before we were married. People really thought they were like, nah, come on. Because we had so much individual, I guess, I don't know what would feel like, not sexuality, but
No,
like
it was like a
would it
sexiness.
have a
Yeah.
sexiness or a chemistry just individually. I love what you just said about the desiring, because I felt like desired when we first started dating. Like I was like, dang, this guy wants me, what?
Yeah.
And I walked around differently, and I was really determined to do this one right because I hadn't done it right. And there's a lot of shame that came from that, like I mentioned before. But when I, that wasn't a secret. It was a secret publicly, I guess, but because I'm not going to like tweet out, hey guys, just had sex. See you on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
9/11-1.
yeah. And seeing like, and I was met with a lot of grace when I, told people. I told my parents first because I couldn't sleep. I'm like you, like I can't keep a secret. Like that. And so I told my parents. So for me, they'd always been a safe place, but like not immediately. Like I was like, I can do this. It's fine. But for me, shame, I always say like shame weighs so much more than like skin and bone on a human. Like shame is the heaviest thing on a human, and you can't work that off. Like there's no gym that will get rid of shame. And so for me, it was tell the truth, shame the devil. You know what I mean? So I told my parents, and they met me with grace. I told my pastors, they met me with grace. And I was met with grace, but I wasn't met with healing in the sense that my ex-husband came along very soon after, like within weeks. And so we started dating. And to me, he was the worship leader. He was the promise. So I was met with what I had read in books or heard in sermons as that's the promise. So I didn't go any deeper than, oh yeah, he looks like the promise. That's great. So I say we didn't cross any physical boundaries, but I actually don't think we crossed emotional boundaries. I didn't know that at the time. I just thought we were doing everything right. If it was up to us, to be honest, we probably would have had sex. Like when I look back, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I wasn't like the boundary keeping one of the two.
Yeah.
But we didn't have sex. The wedding night was horrible. I don't really know what was up. I was feeling real good. I was like, like, hello, hi, over here. But so it wasn't great. We didn't have sex on our wedding night. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, I did not wait this long to not have sex on my wedding night. Like, are you kidding me? But, he was still very like comforting that night, if that makes sense. So emotionally I was like, oh, cool. It's just not going to happen tonight. But then like the next day we talked about it, we did, it still wasn't great. And we just could never find a groove. Like there just wasn't a groove there. And I'll talk from my own personal experience, I guess, which is all I'm obviously going to talk about. It's not mine to talk about. But for me, I just never felt wanted. I never felt desired or pursued in that sense. So then I started thinking there was something wrong with me, because before I was married, I had been pursued. And I'd said no a bunch. Yes, a couple times, but no a bunch. And I knew what it felt to be pursued, but that was always bad. So now that you're putting it in a safe environment, I'm not being pursued anymore. Does that mean I'm really, my greatest fear as a 3, I'm worthless? Like, does that really mean that my greatest fear that you actually don't want me is real? That's terrifying. So, it wasn't good at all. And I tried to talk to people about it. I wasn't the shy and like, let's not speak up one. I was like, hello, can we get some help over here? but it was always like wait and see. And I knew something was off. Like I just knew something wasn't right. And I, like in church, a lot of people will joke about the husband being the one with the highest sex drive, or like the husband being the one that's like, the woman says she has a headache. Well, like I was the dude in this situation. So I felt really, what's the word? Like I couldn't relate to them, the women, when they were talking. They'd be like, he just always wants it. And I was like, I wish. Like to me, that was something that I desired. And so I wanted to talk about it. I wanted to like get it right because I knew it could be healthy and I knew it could be good. But I started to feel like I wasn't desirable. So that's actually moving on to the, I guess, the third question of the hurdle. Now being single again, and Angela's kind of been on this journey with me. It's been maybe, and I'm not exaggerating, in the last month that I have accepted the fact that I am a desirable and attractive woman that attracts men. Would you like that has literally been in the last month, because with growing up not being attractive to people that I was attracted to, lots of unrequited love situations, lots of Taylor Swift songs that went unheard, you know what I mean? But and then I got married and was desired for like a second and then wasn't anymore, and then I come out of that, you come out of a divorce and you're like, you confused. And because sex was never something that was good for us ever, it left me thinking I wasn't desirable. So I would find myself post-marriage in these situations, not with like sex, but just these situations that I was like, how did I get myself in this situation? Why is that person attracted to me and I didn't see that? Or like naive situations, I guess, like truly naive, because I really had this hurdle that I had to work through of, oh, I thought I wasn't attractive because this person didn't have sex with me. I put their issue in a sense on me. And it's been a recent thing to come back to that. So that's kind of been cool. If I could do it again, I mean, call me the church kid I am, I still would. I really want to just wait and see. Now, I want to.
Yeah. ...
I don't know what that's going to look like, but I really want to, because I do believe, I just call me a sap. I love yours and Maddie's story, Brandon. Like, I love that now I've already had experiences, so I can't just like have a lobotomy. Like, that's not going to happen.
Grow back a hymen.
But you know what? Like, I feel like I know me now. So that's been something. Shame. Yeah. I've had to get rid of shame and work through shame of knowing my body, knowing what I like. I know me now. So.
And you know, look, this is not an.
What? What'd you say?
This is not an uncommon story, because look, when I asked my friends, here's some of the answers I got. One told me that they were upset that they got sold something that wasn't true. So he was a good church kid his whole life, virgin, you know, and he was adamant about it. And then when he got married, he realized, man, there was just things biologically, like some people deal with this, like where size is an issue.
Sure.
You know, where it's not like it just doesn't fit well together and it takes a lot of work. And he's like, man, sex has just been work. And I got sold that wait until you get married, because then it's going to be awesome.
Then it's great.
And for him, he's like, this wasn't awesome. So that was one thing I got. That's Another friend was the opposite. He did have sex with his wife for like 8 years before they got married. And they had sex since they were 16. And he believes, he's like, man, look, if we could have, maybe, yeah, but you know what? It's been such like, it's helped him. And I'm not promoting, again, this is not me promoting sex before marriage. I just want y'all to hear that. This is their story and what they believe. That it, in some way, even though they wanted it to be different, it ended up being this way. But at the end of it, it kind of helped them. And their sex life is still amazing. So that threw me into a paradox, because I'm like, wait, what? I was always taught that if you did have it before marriage, that it's going to ruin it. And you know what? Let's not front. 9 times out of 10, it does. It 100% speeds things up way too quick. And you end up falling for people that you shouldn't. And emotionally, you end up connected.
Sex is very powerful.
When it says the two become one,
that's a real thing.
It's legit. Yeah. You'll find yourself in the worst situations once you engage in sex before marriage, like 1,000%. But for this couple, it worked out. They got married, and and they say their sex life now is still is the best out of all their friends. So I'm like, this is interesting. This is like such an interesting topic. And when asked, would you do it again differently? My friend, that even though he has a rough sex life, he said, yeah, I'd probably do it. I would still not have sex before marriage.
Wow.
Because that's just how I was raised and that's just what I believe. And then my other brother was like, man, I'd like to say I wouldn't, but I'm about this. I don't like it when somebody tells me don't do this. Why? Because the Bible said so.
Right.
He says, I'd much rather you tell me the why. And that's something that I've been hearing with everybody. Like,
Yep.
tell me the why. Don't just say don't do it, but tell me why.
Get
and
your
that
own
way,
revelation on it.
yeah, like you can process it yourself. And that was his words. And I was like, man, that's super interesting. What were you gonna say, babe?
Well, to the why, like even if you're not from the church or grew up with a religious background or conservative background, I've heard people talk about when you have sex with someone, it's your energy field goes out about 6 feet, right? So your energy field is combining with their energy field, and it takes a while for you to untangle your energy with that person. So we can talk like biblically about soul ties or whatever that would be. And then you can talk about just like a scientific like energy field. Like you are actually biologically connecting with a human, and it's not just a hookup from whatever app or whatever, and then you go about your business.
None of the apps I was on, just for the record.
It is 100% something that you will have to at some point untangle yourself. I felt like emotionally I was casted off into different lands. Like I left myself in different lands, and I had to go back and get pieces of myself so that I can become whole again. You know what I'm saying? So that was just my plight that I had to do. But it's interesting in the sense of like people don't understand how powerful it is. I know my wife was talking about that when we first started, whatever, that she didn't see the connection. That's the only thing I did see when we had sex. It was like, man, I'm doing something with someone that I can't do with anyone else, and we're actually building a life. Yeah. And that was the thing that really was impressive to me, and it was awesome. It was like, we are building something here. We're not just having sex. We're literally building a life that we're going to look back on and be like,
was that something you focused on because you had things to compare to, that you were like, let me focus on what those things can't be? They can't be building something. They can't be. Was that why?
Well, it was definitely something that I used. Not that I used, but it was a truth. It was a truth. When I was doing what I was doing, it felt great. But right after I came, it was instant shame and instant, I wanted to just jump off of a cliff.
With the others.
Yeah, with the others when I was doing it not right. This time, even though it was a little more difficult on the onset because of all the things that you were dealing with, I just reminded myself, hey man, but when you do it, like you're building a life. Like these are like building blocks that you're going to stare back at when you're 60 and you guys are walking down the beach holding hands. Like it was going to be because of all these actions that you took towards one another, the love that you showed one another. And to me, it just felt magical in that sense.
I think with the shame thing as well, one of the huge things I've realized with my therapist is she will allow me to voice those I guess, I don't know what to call it, temptations, I guess. Mm-hmm. Whereas for so long I never voiced them. And so they would stay silent until I gave into them. And they would, so for example, say I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be great to go and have sex with this person. Not in a relationship, just super attracted to them. Mm-hmm. This would be great. She'll sit down and be like, she would like sit down and be like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's go down 6 months down that road. What? No, I'm not allowed to. No, let's go 6 months. So say that happens. You continue in relationship with this person. You have sex with them. Let's go down the track. How do you feel? Terrible. Why? Well, because they're like a terrible human. And like, I'm aware of that. They're just really hot.
They're just hot.
They're just real hot. Okay, cool. So let's talk about it. So how are you feeling? Like, what are the possibilities? And to me, it has blown my mind how much freedom comes from having a conversation with yourself in 6 months' time. And I think whether it's wrong or right, don't obey something well, I don't want to say it like that, but like when we obey the law, if you will, when it comes to the Bible, because it's the law, and don't allow God to give us a reason why or our own revelation on it for us, then Paul said the law brings death. Like when it's just the law, it brings death. But when I allow, for me, the Holy Spirit to breathe on that with his why, that allows me to have a conversation with him. Hey, this is real. Yeah, I know it's real. I created you. What?
That's how I feel like I read the whole Bible or believe the whole Bible, that it's not because God wants to rule me. It's because he loves me and he knows what's best for me. And it's a dialogue. It's not like, hey, if you do this, you're going to hell and you're a bad person. And I can't believe I even created you. Like, it's not even that. It's just like, hey, you probably shouldn't have sex before you're married because you're gonna have these ties. You can get STD, you can get pregnant, and you're gonna like find yourself heartbroken and thinking about that person when you're with your husband. And like, honestly, it's probably not the best idea for you to do that before. And then what we do sometimes in our upbringing is like, don't do it or you're going to hell.
And see, this is the thing that when I was talking to my boy, it's like, look, no matter what it is, whether it's your parents, whether it was a religion, whether it was a church, whether it was whatever, there's no blame that you can attribute them. I think in every way, parents, churches, buildings, schools, all of us can do better talking about the whys and not just the what. So it's not a blame. It's a, man, if we could do this a different way, like if we can reverse this, or even now moving forward when we have, when people have kids and, whatever, like it's good to tell the people why. It's good to let them know, hey, this is normal. Don't feel shame, but let me tell you why. Let me tell you why it's better to abstain. It's not that there's a God up there that's like, I don't want you to enjoy the one thing that I created.
I gave you a libido, but don't do it.
Yeah, like it's not that. God loves sex. And again, we're promoting God's view of sex, and we know that it's made perfect within this commitment relationship called marriage. I think that's when you see the most fruit from it. I guess if I could say, like, you'll really see its intention. Because I remember one time I had sex with a chick and she was I think I said this before, she was such a liar. And
quote, lying whore.
Lying whore is what I called her.
End quote.
Even though she's sweet, she's a sweetheart. But anyways, she was just a lying whore.
I'm confused.
But I was so attached to her, and I was like, man, this is really. But then it hit me. This is why you have sex in marriage, because when times get hard, this thing that y'all do, it connects you so hard that you don't want to leave so quickly. You don't want to get out of it. You have this tie, this supernatural tie that's like saying, work it out, work it out, work it out. So I feel like within the context of marriage, for me, hands down, the most fruitful and the best use of sex.
Absolutely.
And someone that like has been married, what's cool for me not being married is I see now with a lot of perspective and time, I have never believed in marriage more than I do right now, which is kind of weird and crazy because I'm divorced, but I've never seen the power of sex at bringing two people together as I have now. And I'm excited to have sex with my husband because I see now how it can bring people together when it's used in that kind of like covenant relationship. And it makes me excited. And I think dealing with shame and being open about it has allowed me to be more free to get excited for that period and that season of my life and what I get to enter into. And it gives me the perspective, like, I don't want to throw that away. Like, I don't want to, because it's also a mess. Like that kind of like emotional attachment to someone. I don't want to be the crazy.
Yeah, no.
I don't want to be the lying whore. What'd you call her?
Lying whore. That's what it is.
Sweetheart. That's also a lying psycho.
No, you're right though. Like, and that's why I say, like, in my answer, like, I think I would try my best to do to remain holy, because I know the outcome of what's gonna happen, even though my flesh is gonna be like, yo, screw this. But I feel like my spirit's gonna be like, no, like, the outcome, what can happen.
Yeah.
And if you're someone who is not married and waiting, here's one thing that we learned at the retreat as well. Try your best to not stifle, to not talk down to not reprimand, to not look down on the sexual being that is inside of you. Do not shame her, him, do not call it bad. Do not call something that God created good and then call it bad. Celebrate it in your own way, you know. And what I mean by that is mentally, like what Elise is saying is that she's excited, like she's stoked. There ain't no part of her that's like, I'm just here trying to make it through, you know. No, it's like, yo, when I get married, it's on. Like, I got some stuff I've been practicing, you know. Like, she's ready for it, and you should be. Like, you should look forward to it.
Thank you for speaking on my behalf, Manuel.
I should. I'm speaking on your behalf. Be excited about it. Create a healthy perspective of sex so that you don't have to go into it with this unhealthy baggage that you are going to have to unpack with your husband, you know? And men practice, or wife, men practice what it means, which is another thing we learned at this thing. We had to stare at different wives, because at the beginning we had to go around in a circle.
That was a really great exercise.
And we moved to different wives, and we had to look at them in the eye for like 5 minutes straight. And then they had to dissect whether we felt safe or not.
Wow.
Just meeting us.
Without knowing you.
Without knowing us.
Whoa.
So I'm in front of a random wife, and I'm looking at her in her eyes.
Oh, I just realized why.
She's looking at me, and we look at each other for like 5 minutes, breaking none, no smiling, no nothing. And she has to tell me, does she feel safe with me?
Because if a woman doesn't feel safe, she's not going to feel sexy.
She's not going to open up. She's
So
not.
men need to know how to make a woman feel safe.
To your body. And then she'll tell you, after she gives you a number, she'll tell you, you know, I give you a 7 or a 6. And then they say, what could he do better
to make you feel safe?
safer? So some women were like, uncross your hands. Relax a little bit.
Wow.
Smile. Like you look like you're tense, or you look like you're whatever. And it's making me feel. So it was crazy to learn how much me as a man, my gaze, my body posture, my whatever, learning how to look at a woman can make her feel safe and wanting to be sexy. And so, men, I encourage you, learn what it feels like, learn what it means to look at someone and be loved, like literally embody love, so that they feel safe when they look at you. And at that point, they'll open up. You know, it is insane how open a woman can be when she feels safe and that she can trust you. Man, there's so much that we can go on and talking about. It's going on an hour and 10 minutes, but we'll probably do this again if you guys liked it. If there's something that we haven't touched on,
Totally.
Ask us all the questions.
Leave a comment, DM the Instagram. I'm always checking. Ask the questions, because we will circle back as quick as you guys want and talk about anything and everything. If you're dealing with this in your marriage, ask for help. You know, don't keep it to yourself. Seek professional help. Again, we are not professionals. Disclaimer. Another disclaimer.
Just human.
Pretty good at it, but not professionals.
Yeah.
We have not. We have tried our best to represent our stories without blame, without any bashing of any institution
Or people.
and we have not in any way. I'm saying it again. If you're young and watching this, or if you're old and watching this, we are not saying go have sex.
No.
We are saying let's talk about it.
Yes.
And if you've had sex, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And if you haven't, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Because there shouldn't be any room for shame
great.
as a child of God. Like, and whether you believe in God or not, you're still a child of God. And if you can't talk to nobody else, look, we're open. We're not claiming to be professionals, but we just have a lifelong experience of what we've done right and what we've done wrong. So we'd love to hear from you. We really hope this has at least helped you guys want to start the dialogue or start walking down the road of sex and having an amazing sex life, as we are walking down that road.
We got to go see a movie.
Shizakov. Hey, we love you guys. Hey, we hope that you have a seat at the table. And if you don't, you are always welcome at ours. Cheers. Happy sex, y'all.
Yay. Let's have sex.
Let's have sex.
Baby.